Wow, look at that desktop wallpaper. This is why I use Windows 11. Alright, so I just want to go over my thoughts on Project Diablo 2. You know, having played Diablo 2 when I was a kid, the idea of an updated version of Diablo 2 really appealed to me, and I wanted to try it out. So this is just my thoughts on what is good, what is bad, and what is in between about Project Diablo 2. So if you don't know, Project Diablo 2 is a mod for the original Diablo 2. It's not for the remastered version. Let's just get started by entering a game. I'm gonna hit play here. So the first thing that I want to talk about that Project Diablo 2 has going for it is that it has a currency tab. So this is really cool. Basically, you can stack in this game. You can stack your runes. So you can even have them stacked in inventory. So I can have 50 L runes here, and you can hold them all in the currency tab, as many as you would like, as far as I know. I mean, I've never reached a limit. Maybe there is one. I don't know, but currency tab is very nice. This is a net positive. I think it's 100% positive. This is something that, of course, Path of Exile had, that you had to pay for, but you don't have to pay for it here, so it's a pretty good deal. Alright, I think this is 100% positive. I think this is great. Alright, another thing that I think is cool about Diablo 2 is the builds, okay? Or Project Diablo 2, that is. So they have some new things here, like, for example, Raised Skeleton Archer. That wasn't an ability in Diablo 2 regular, so they've changed some things, right? And they've changed some things around. I don't want to go into too much detail, but I think there's an encouragement to have build diversity. That is to like mix and match your stuff, come up with new interesting ways of approaching the game. You know, I've seen some very interesting builds that I wouldn't have expected to work as well as they did. If you go online and look for Project Diablo 2 builds on YouTube, you'll probably find some that are unique. You know, use some invention, use some creativity to them, and I think that's cool, because I think Diablo 2 had gotten to the point where there's basically no creativity at all on builds. You just do what the meta wanted you to, and unless you knew for a fact that you were going to suffer if you wanted to do. I mean, like, these trees aren't very complicated. There's not really that many serious choices on here, and they still have the bonuses that kind of force you to put a lot of points into the same sort of stuff. But yeah, there's some build diversity, I think. I've got a little Raised Skeletons build here. Works pretty well. I'm playing hardcore, and I got to level 93, and I could have gone further. I'm gonna make a point here that I think is very important, is that I don't think this should be called, I mean, I guess Path of Diablo was already taken, but Project Diablo 2 is basically just adding stuff that Path of Exile has into Diablo 2, like maps, stash tabs, like currency tabs, force move. This is also a perfectly positive thing here. I want to talk about this for a second. Move only on your left mouse button. So you can have your left mouse button, so the only thing it does is move your character. It's not attack. You can't do this in Diablo 2 Resurrected. Okay, you can set up another key so that it's force move anymore. I discovered when I played it, but you can't actually set your left mouse button, so that you always have these problems where you want to move to an area, and you know, if you have teeth here, it's like, say you want to attack the creature and you click slightly to the left of it, you're going to move your character there. Say you want to move your character and you accidentally just click a little too close to the monster, you're going to attack. So this was very annoying, and Diablo 2. And I mean, I didn't realize how annoying it was until I tried Path of Exile, and I realized that this could be a much simpler thing. I didn't even like it at first because it's like, well, that means that I only have one button that I use for skills. I only use my right mouse button for skills, but it works out. Also, another great thing about Path of Diablo, or not Path of Diablo, sorry, Project Diablo, I'm getting confused there, is that it has a trade website, a dedicated trade website. So if we go to Project Diablo 2 or PD2 on Google, it'll take us to the Project Diablo 2 website, and there's trade. Okay, and so there's a search thing, so you can go to search, you can search for the name, like, so we go on Homunculus, and we'll find people listing Homunculus for World Stone Stars and High Runes. Let's say I want a Homunculus that has certain things. I can go into the properties here, and I can type, like, I want a Homunculus that has 38 or all resistance, at least. So I can type in all resistance, and all resistance come up, and we'll put 38. So we'll get homunculuses that have at least 38 all resist. Beautiful. It's not like an auction house where you just grab the item without interacting with people. You actually interact with the person to make the trade, which I think is kind of fun. And that brings me, I guess, to the items, the differences in the items that we have here. They've changed items, and I think a lot of the changes are for the better, are interesting at least. One of the things, major things they changed was they added corruption. So this is another thing that Path of Exile has. Surprise, surprise. You're going to want everything corrupted basically at the end when you're. So you can see that you're basically going to have everything corrupted for, corruptions can add. When you corrupt an item, if you don't know from Path of Exile, you can brick your item or ruin it. You can make it bad. Or you can just add a nice little feature, like here we have +3 to maximum lightning resistance, +10 on my Marowak Boneweave boots, which is really nice. Despite this being almost a carbon copy of mechanics in Path of Exile, I thought it was a good mechanic in Path of Exile, and the option to 25% chance, I guess, to ruin your item. It certainly makes an interesting meta. So another thing I want to get into here is the fact that this game is free. I mean, you need to pay for Diablo 2 Lord of Destruction, but besides that, the game is free. They ask if you could please give them donations.
Yes.
That's cool. I think if you enjoy it, you should donate because it's a fun game and they put a lot of work into it. Okay. One of the things that I like about this game that I don't like about Path of Exile is the itemization in this game. Items are relatively simple. And I mean, they're not perfectly simple, obviously. There's still all this, details over here, like faster hit rate, break points, stuff like that. It requires kind of deeper game knowledge. But compared to Path of Exile, I think this game's pretty simple in terms of, it's pretty easy to see, oh, this is a good item because it does this. It's not incredibly complicated. This does leave some, Path of Exile has a lot of interesting builds that come out of unique items that you wouldn't expect or maybe weren't even intended in the gameplay. Because there's so much going on under the hood. It's approachable. I think it's approachable, and that has mostly been preserved in this mod, and I think that's probably a good thing. I mean, they're not trying to completely recreate Path of Exile, although they do make a fair stab at it. And of course, another thing that Path of Exile has that they've added in Project Diablo 2 is loot filters. So if I just go somewhere like, let's say, River of Flame, and my super high-powered level 93 character jumps across the gap and kills some monsters, you can see that there aren't a shitload of items in the drop. It's just a fully fugitive here, flawless sapphire here. But basically, what's going on is under the hood is I've got a loot filter that is community made, and it filters the items so that you don't have to see everything. So you can go to the options here and path Diablo 2 options and loot filter, and you can. This loot filter even has a level, so you can have a strict loot filter, medium, relaxed. These basically potionless strict, and Path of Exile had that is, I think, a fantastic feature. I mean, if you've played Diablo 2, you know there's loot everywhere that's just like, it's just a lot of clutter for your brain to sort through. And I think that's kind of an annoying part of Diablo 2. It's still preferable to the alternative. So yeah, these are all, everything I'm talking about thus far is basically a positive, okay? It's all copied basically from Path of Exile, but these are all nice features in Path of Exile that it's nice to have basically in, you know, Diablo 2. So let's talk about what I do not like about the mod. I played hardcore, and I still got to the point. I started at softcore, and I got to the point where I was bored. And one of the things that Project Diablo tries to do is it tries to introduce a full end game into Diablo. Okay, Diablo 2. Okay, and what we have here is maps, just like in Path of Exile, and the maps are very similar to what they are in Path of Exile. You have a mini boss and a bunch of mobs, and you roll the maps to see if you can, you know, like here's a yellow map. It has monsters have 119 enhanced defense. Monsters have plus 14 to poison skill damage. Like these little modifications that make the map more difficult, but also it increases the magic and gold find and monster density and experience gain. So these are all copied right from Path of Exile. I think, you know, maps in Path of Exile, here's where some people are going to definitely disagree with me, but I found Path of Exile mapping a little bit boring. But you know, there was an element where the difficulty increased as you mapped, and you know, there was bosses after you mapped a certain amount or whatever. That I was never that into bossing in these games. I'm not a Dark Souls kind of guy. I reached a point in this game pretty quickly where I felt like I could do pretty much all the maps. There's only 4 tiers, I think, and I don't want to do bosses, which is nice that you have the option not to do the big serious bosses. I still have my Hellfire Torch, which I just bought from somebody else, my Annihilus charm. So yeah, maps get boring for me, and I thought they got a little boring in Path of Exile, but I thought they got less boring. I'm not a huge fan of Path of Exile overall, probably mostly because of how complex it gets, and I'm a pretty casual ARPG player. But this is more casual, I think, and more approachable, as long as you can stand the old graphics, which if you played it as a child are probably nostalgic for you. But anyways, I digress. So let's pull up an easy map here. Let's pull up Halls of Torture blue. I'll show you what the map is like. So we're gonna go in here. Gonna hit F, you know, do my call to arms buffs. And then we're gonna go run around. We're gonna teleport around. Actually, I have teleported as a necromancer. I do not have a enigma, so that's a feature. You know, it is what it is, right? Like, you run around, you kill monsters. If you're a necromancer with summons, you just teleport around and do nothing. Maybe occasionally cast a amplify damage. But anyways, I hit level 93, and I'm on the leaderboard for hardcore, and I am honestly, like, I don't want to say this, but I'm very bored of mapping, and it's like, I mean, I'm not even doing the more difficult maps usually, but I can do them. Like, I've tried them, you know, rolled with yellow modifiers, and of course I don't do certain modifiers, but you know, I can do them. You know, I'm level 93. I'm not gonna hit level 99 because it's just boring. Like it's brain dead. And you can say, oh, it's because you're playing a necromancer and you don't click, and it's like, no, I've played a barbarian 2 to level 90, and just clicking doesn't make it like that. Just because I'm left clicking more doesn't mean I'm using my brain more. And for me, gaming, part of gaming for me is using my brain for something, and I don't really feel like I'm using my brain here. Occasionally something a little dangerous happens, my health will go down to like half or something, like very rarely. I have, I can go over my build, but I'm not going to. I've got max block and a lot of physical damage reduction, and overcapped resistances, so it's hard to die, I guess. And like, I just don't see any reason to play anymore, and this is the problem here, is that, everything about this is good, except, albeit copied from Path of Exile, but the mapping, and I thought Path of Exile mapping was boring, but I think this is even more boring, and I don't think there's any, it's cool that they made an effort. This game is free. They've made an effort to improve upon what already exists, and they've offered it for no cost. However, their attempts to introduce an end game that is actually engaging, I think, have fallen short. I really enjoyed playing the campaign with the new builds and stuff like that. Trying new builds that didn't really work. And at the end of the day, I think the end game that they've introduced is not, particularly interesting. And I think it's just a copy of, for better or for worse, I shouldn't say it's just a copy, it is a copy of Path of Exile. Some of the things are good, like corruption was always cool, currency tab, always cool, extra stash tabs, which mine are very messy, always cool. Loot filters, always cool. But mapping with no real direction and no payoff except bossing, and people tend to build characters specifically for bossing. I really like what they've done with. I keep trying to say Path of Diablo, but I think there's another mod called Path of Diablo, but Project Diablo. I like a lot of things they've done, but also I find and it's free, and I really didn't want to make a video criticizing it, but I find that the end game could use a lot of work. They don't have to put that work in. They're not charging any money for that work, and I'm appreciative of everything that they've done for free, to make available for free. But I think it's kind of boring. Maybe that's just expected. Maybe that's what people want, is just play for a little bit and then stop playing. But I feel like there was a genuine attempt to add an end game to this game and make it more permanent as a form of entertainment. And I think that it was a blast to play through the campaign with different builds. But I'm just gonna say this here. I'm reminded of this quote from Jonathan Blow or whatever, right? This guy, Jonathan Blow, the guy who made The Witness, this puzzle game. This guy right here, he is a cranky game developer, and he made this comment, like, open source people, or he said, I don't know if this game's open source, but it's not charging. The one thing they lack is creativity. And I think about this quote all the time when I'm using open source software that's just copying something else. And Project Diablo 2 is just copying Path of Exile straight up. It's copying good things out of Path of Exile, but it's just copying it. It isn't doing anything original. But also, like, the end game is just, it's not that interesting. You're gonna get bored eventually, and maybe not. Maybe you can just grind endlessly, mindlessly, and you don't get bored. But I do. So, yeah.